Hello and welcome.
Oh my god.
It's season 4 time. I'm so pumped. Are you pumped?
I'm pumped. This is the Generally Spooky podcast.
It is indeed. We are here to give you all things Scottish history and spooky.
That's Kieran.
I am Kieran, yes. That's all. You don't get introduced. That's my co-host.
Already being shat on.
The wonderful, the beautiful, the exquisite, Eilidh.
We are so happy to be back.
Too much space? Yes, happy to be here, bringing you a fresh round of spooking, just in time for the spooky season.
It's the end of August. We are almost in September, and I'm ready for it to be autumn now because I'm sick of summer. I don't like summer. I like the cozy time. I like autumn and winter. I'm ready.
Yep, we're just being like a bit cool last night. It's not as much as cold, but looking at the wood-burning stove, being like, we're going to get that lit soon. It's too soon now, it'd be too hot, but soon it's going to get cozy up in here.
But we are going to get you in the mood for spooky season.
Yes, we are.
With a new season of the Generally Spooky podcast.
And
that's going to bring us all the way up to Halloween.
Just what I was about to say, all the way through to the end of October. Spooky goodness.
The last episode of the season comes out on my birthday.
Yep, 28th of October. A fine day, if I do say so myself.
I like having a birthday so close to Halloween.
Yep.
But your mum was born on Halloween.
Yeah, her birthday is Halloween. That's why it's easy to remember. Yeah, it's quite a strange one, isn't it? I wouldn't consider her a spooky lady, but...
She listens to the podcast, sir.
That's true. Thanks, Mum.
And if you follow us on Instagram, you will have seen her modelling our lovely merch.
Yes, you will have.
Which is available at generallyspooky.com.
Oh, man.
If you're interested, whatever.
Just like whatever.
Like, it would be so weird and random if you, bought a mug that has our Generally Spooky ghost on it.
That'd be really weird.
That'd be so weird.
But, so funny. Like, oh my god. Or you could join our Patreon and then get 10% off when you buy that mug.
Interesting. Kieran is the frugal one of the two of us.
Yep, that's a good deal right there. But you should join the Patreon anyway, if you like the podcast and want to support us.
We started the Patreon back at the start of the year.
We did.
So if you join, depending on what tier you want to go for, it starts at £4 a month and goes up to...
12.
I can't even remember. Because I'm too focused on what we have to put up there.
Yep.
Yeah, we started back in January time. So if you join now, you get access to the whole back catalogue.
And there's a lot. I'll go through the tiers. For £4, you get 10% off merch and early access to these main episodes. They come out on a Thursday over there. Hello, Patreon. Happy Thursday.
Hi, you guys are already here.
You guys are great.
We love you guys.
Then there's the Spooky Sergeant, which is £8 a month. This is plus tax of your country, I think. So if you're in the UK, there's VAT on top. But for £8 a month, you get the Patreon exclusive extra episodes.
Which are super fun. They were called mini episodes, and then they just got longer and longer because I can't help myself, and now they're called extra episodes.
Yeah, they started at 40 minutes and have gone all the way up to an hour and a half.
Yeah.
And there's 8 of them, with one more coming out this month.
Yes, we just have to record it because this month has been hectic. But it is coming. It is coming before the start of September because we promised to get all of the August content out in August. So there's another one coming.
There's another one coming. And then if you're super committed, you can be a Spookmaster General.
Which is the best tier, let's be real.
The top tier. So you get all of that. And you get our wee blether, where during the main season, we're going to debrief the episodes. It's usually like an extra half hour where we discuss some of the tangents, maybe some of the details we didn't have time for in the main episodes, because, as you've noticed, they can get a bit long.
But if you look back at our wee blether episodes, we've also just done some fun stuff. When we haven't been in season, we do quizzes sometimes. Yeah,
Eilidh quizzed me on my knowledge of the Generally Spooky podcast.
Shocking.
And it was embarrassing, to say the least.
We talk about movies and TV shows and books that we like, all kinds of stuff.
And then you also have the Patreon Book Club, where Eilidh is reading a chapter a week of The Turn of the Screw currently.
Yes.
By Henry James.
And we are about 20 chapters in.
Yeah, so then all of that, there are 8 extra episodes, 21 wee blethers, 19 spooky book clubs. There's a lot. And you get access to the whole back catalogue for not very much a month. And pretty much all of that goes to us to help support the podcast and keep the lights on. And
it's such a big help.
Yeah.
If you're already on Patreon, you have no idea. We tell you with everything we record, but you have no idea how much it helps us out. And it's the main thing that keeps us being able to do the podcast.
Yeah. Helps pay for all the hosting, pays for the equipment, and pays for all the other gubbins we have to do.
And you can cancel whenever you like. You don't have to commit to anything.
Yeah,
you can stick around for a month, binge everything, and then leave again, and that's totally fine.
That'd be a good month. That'd be a pretty fun month.
But I will say that everyone on Patreon is pretty cool. If you want to be part of the, the club.
Yeah.
It's a pretty cool club to be part of.
I think so. It's kind of a big deal. Yes, you should consider joining. There's a link in the description below.
You'll love it.
You'll love it.
You'll love it.
Now that we've brutalised everyone with that plug.
I don't think so. I think it's okay.
I think so too.
Because I firmly believe that if you like the podcast, you're going to really like what we have over there. Because it's really fun.
Yeah, it's really fun. And it's just the podcast, but more.
Yeah.
So it's perfect. We also have some other cool stuff to share with you.
Yeah, we've been busy during our not quite a hiatus.
Yeah, our semi-hiatus.
I set up this system of us having seasons and then downtime, and it's backfired because I don't really get downtime.
Yeah. Your downtime from the podcast is spent preparing the podcast.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of other stuff what happened this summer.
Yeah.
Including a fun mini-series on fairies.
Yes. Thank you if you've listened. We got some really good feedback just about the whole series, so thank you so much.
Yeah. But there's also a reading list we put together of books books Eilidh uses to make the podcast and do research and things, and books we like. And if you click through, you'll go to Amazon, you can order one, we'll get a commission if you do, and that's another nice way to support the podcast. But we also have 2 new partners we're working with.
We do. We were already working with Bird and Blend, who make lovely, lovely tea.
Who we still appreciate greatly.
Thank you, Bird and Blend.
Thank you. But who should we talk about first? I'm really excited for both of them.
Well, I mean, this has been the fruit of your labour. You are the business mind behind the podcast.
Well, that's true.
So I feel like I will be stepping on your toes if I explain.
Well, the first one has just come through this morning, so I don't have enough information on it really. But we've just partnered with the National Trust for Scotland, who own a whole load of the different castles and spooky places we've talked about on the podcast.
And usually, not always, but usually if you can visit these places and they're well maintained and made into tourist attractions, then there's a good chance that the National Trust is a part of that.
Yeah.
They do a lot of good work preserving historical sites.
And you can join up for a year's membership. So if you're coming to Scotland or in Scotland and going to travel around a bit to some of these, it's really good value that you get the membership and then you get free parking, free access, and some other goodies and stuff which I haven't had time to look into.
And you're helping to preserve Scotland's history, which is the most important thing.
Yeah.
And you'll support the podcast.
And you'll support the podcast. We'll get a commission if you sign up for a membership.
We talked about this a lot when we did our Skara Brae and Scale House episode.
Yes.
Because if you go to visit Orkney, you can't really throw a stone without hitting a National Trust site. So if you're going to visit Orkney, the year pass is well worth it, because if you're paying for each one individually, it's more expensive. So I think that's when we went into more depth.
I think so.
We will hopefully have more information about this next time.
Yeah,
sometime
I think so.
soon.
It was a bit last minute that we got approved into the programme this morning. So that's pretty cool. Also link for that in the description. But we're also got approached by an awesome feminist LGBTQ plus clothing company called The Spark Company. And it's thespark.company, who are doing lots of awesome stuff. And we just ordered some clothes from them this morning.
Yes, they sell t-shirts, sweatshirts, mugs, gifts, tote bags, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
And they donate portions of their profit to charities.
Yes. They have some... they work with Bloody Good Period, who are working on period information and getting it rights for it and such.
I love what they do. I had a look at that charity in particular when I was having a look at the Spark Company website, and they do some really good stuff. They're working on ending the stigma around periods. Yeah. Which is fantastic. And providing period products for people who need them.
A worthy cause, so they donate to them. And to AKT, who are a youth homeless charity who help out LGBTQ plus members who have found themselves homeless at a young age.
Yeah, they're doing brilliant work.
Yes. And they sell awesome stuff.
They do. Luckily, I kind of lucked out in our order that we placed because I got all the clothes.
Yeah, it's mostly female sizing, but there is a men's section.
Yes, and a lot of their stuff is unisex,
Yeah.
so the gender doesn't matter. But I got myself an Eat the Patriarchy t-shirt.
Which is amazing.
That has the Jurassic Park logo on it.
Yeah.
Which I very much enjoy.
That's only there till the end of the month, and then they're retiring it to the end of August. So if you want one of them...
Oh, what if we all bought the Eat the Patriarchy t-shirts using the Generally Spooky link?
Well, that'd be good.
And we all wore them for the next episode.
That would be fun.
Like, we could all just, like, hang out.
Yeah, we could all vibe in our t-shirts. I like the sound of that.
Anyway, back to being professionals.
Yes. They also have some cool stuff. That's just one that says "Sounds Gay, I'm In," with a rainbow that I really enjoy. There's a mug I liked, which was a ray of fucking sunshine. Which sweatshirt did you get?
I got the Fight Like a Girl sweatshirt.
Yeah, which is fun. There's another one which was "Without Hermione, Harry would have died" in book 1, which I thoroughly enjoyed. And I got a mug that says "Nevertheless, she persisted," which I thought was cool. So we will also have that for next week. We ordered it this morning to let you know how quality and stuff is.
Yes.
But if you use the link below, you can then use Spooky Spark 5 at the checkout and you'll get 5% off.
Ding, ding, ding.
Ding, ding, ding. A win all round. So there's loads of ways you can support the podcast. And if
we're full to the brim with news and new things.
I know, it's so
new fun things to bring you.
It's so exciting.
And we haven't even gotten to the episode yet. Oh my God.
Oh my days. And if you don't want to or can't support us financially, you can leave us a review on your podcast player.
Yes.
That is also very much appreciated.
Tell your friends. Tell your granny. I did, and she can't handle spooky stuff.
Yeah, she gets
But your granny might
upset.
like it more.
Yeah. Tell your friends if it comes up. If you have a blog, you can link to us. That would be cool. And yeah. I think that's all the news.
Is that everything you had scheduled?
Yes, that is
Business master?
business. And I've just checked and we're still recording, so that's lucky.
Thank God.
That would have been embarrassing. 12 minutes of just talking into nothing.
I know. Well, I mean, embarrassing, but I would prefer it to happen during our first episode back for a full season than like midway through when we're back in the swing of things. Because this feels like... Do you know what it feels like?
What?
It feels like coming back to school after the summer holidays.
Yeah, totally.
You know that amped feeling you get when like you see your friends again and you're excited to get into new stuff. That's what this feels like.
I am hyped.
Especially with it being the end of August. That's
Yeah.
when the Scottish schools usually go back.
Mm-hmm.
The school's been back a couple of weeks.
I think so, yeah. Yeah, I can feel for that.
Right?
Because I had a great time doing the mini-series over the summer, but it doesn't feel the same as a main series
It feels
does.
different. I don't know why.
There's something about it.
Because the format's the same.
Yeah, but here we are. It's spooky, and I like it.
Now, I will say, our original plan for episode 1 was we were going to start the episode by cracking into 2 miniatures that we have
Oh, so we were.
of Sassenach whiskey. Which, if you have been listening since the very, very beginning, is a big deal.
Yes.
Not sponsored in
Nope.
any way. Just an act of kindness.
An act of kindness from one of our patrons, Jan.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
But it is 12:30 in the afternoon.
It's perhaps a little bit early for a whiskey.
Well, usually that wouldn't stop me, but the house painter's here.
Yeah. And I'm driving later.
So we're going to save it
Yes.
for when we can actually enjoy it
Yes.
instead of, not being able to drive later.
Forcing it down for lunch. And
Yeah.
yeah, we do have those. They're I'm excited to try it.
Me too. I am pumped.
Well, shall we roll some music?
Yes, let's do it.
Roll some music. Get into it. Now that all the admin is out of the way and everyone's has got on our hype train, what are we talking about today?
Oh boy. Well, this season's going to be a tiny bit different because
What?
you
Yes.
actually have some ideas about what we're talking about.
I do.
Because we've been trying to organise some spooky field trips. And
yes.
To do that, I have to actually tell Kieran where we're going.
As the driver of the family, that is more useful if I know where we're going.
Because for some reason, it's annoying when I just say we have to leave and I don't tell you where.
It's quite annoying.
Sounds unreasonable to me, but okay.
Asking kind of a lot.
So yeah, you actually have a little bit of an idea of what we're talking about. And if you've been following us over on Instagram, you'll have seen I've been posting some not very subtle clues, but some clues as to some of the things we're talking about this season. And I posted a photo that was a clue to this episode.
Did you?
Yes.
Oh, I'm not on Instagram, so I don't see these things.
No, but if you are, you've seen this. And if you're not, you should be, because it's great.
Yep.
We are getting back to our roots here on the podcast this week. And I decided that we would kick season 4 off with a bang.
Mm-hmm.
We're getting into some properly spooky Scottish history.
Ooh, straight in with the spooks. I love it.
Today, we're going to be talking about the Sauchie Poltergeist.
Oh. I mean, it's intriguing.
Excited? Any thoughts?
Any thoughts?
How are you feeling?
I'm wondering if it's on Sauchie Hall in Glasgow, because that's the only... Sauchie?
Sauchie. It's spelt the same as Sauchie Hall.
Yeah, Sauchie. Yeah, that's the only Sauchie I've ever come across. And it's mostly like clubs and shops. So I'm like, is there a poltergeist on that street?
We are not talking about Sauchie Hall Street.
Okay, well that's good. I'm excited. A ghost story. Mm-hmm. I can get on board, try and come to terms with ghosts not being real.
Well, even I've taken you into consideration, babe.
Thank you.
Because even though this is poltergeist based, there are a lot of theories and information outside of the haunting itself that make this quite intriguing that I think will interest you.
Well,
I consulted scientific journals for you.
Oh, babe, it's so hot.
So inappropriate. I think you're going to like it because there's enough... I'm trying to say it without saying it. There's enough credible detail.
Okay.
That I think is going to make you confused.
I mean, I enjoy the mystery of the unexplained.
I think this has that. I think this has the sweet spot for you. Because I remember you saying that you really liked the Brand Seer episode.
I did enjoy that one.
You like the ones where you're kind of in the middle and you don't really know how you feel?
Yes.
I think this is going to do that.
Maybe I'm just on the defensive because we watched more Most Haunted last night.
Oh my God.
And it's a ghost hunting show in the UK that we talked about in our Culzean castle, spelled Culzean. And it just rages me out. So I've been raging out at those ghost hunters all night. So maybe now that we're doing a ghost episode, I'm just like, oh, no.
Such a good night last night. I had such a good time.
Yeah, it's really fun. And I rage out so hard.
Well, let's get into it.
Yes.
I've made an editorial decision that I feel
Okay.
like I have to explain before we get in. And it might seem a bit weird listening to the episode. That's okay. But I was wrestling with this for a little while and I've come to a decision about how I wrote the script and how we're going to continue. Mm-hmm. And what I've done is I've changed the name of the main real person involved in this story.
Okay.
First of all, my first reason was that they were a child at the time. Mm-hmm. They aren't a child now, but they were then.
I would hope not.
Well, you don't know when the story happened yet, do you?
Oh, of course, yes.
But when this happened to them, they were a child.
Uh-huh.
So that was one of the things that factored in. But also, as I was doing research, it became clear that this person doesn't want to talk to the media, doesn't want to be contacted, doesn't want to be bothered, and doesn't want to think about any of this anymore.
Fair play.
So the fact that they're so keen not to talk about their story made me uneasy about including her just full name.
Yeah.
Because it was published. Mm-hmm. I just didn't want to do that.
That sounds fine.
I want to honour her wishes of putting it behind her.
Sounds good to me.
So I've just changed her name.
What did you go for? Did you go for like Kate Winslet?
I didn't. I have decided to call her Carol.
Very nice.
Because the main character in the Poltergeist movie is called Carol.
Ah. You didn't just go for like a name that's notoriously hard to say if you're Scottish? Just like Carl.
Carol.
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 I can handle Carol.
Yeah, Carol. I hope that makes sense.
That seems very reasonable.
It just
very
felt like the right call, because I don't want to add to any uneasiness she might feel. Mm-hmm. And all the information I have is already in the public domain. But I just... she doesn't want to talk about it, so I don't want to talk about her that way.
Yes.
And I also wanted to say that a lot of the information that I found came from Malcolm Robinson's book called The Sauchie Poltergeist. He put together like a blow-by-blow account of everything that we're going to talk about, and he gathered together a lot of the press coverage from the time, as well as source material that I can't access because I'm not a journalist. He's approached the BBC, he's gotten access to archives and stuff. So lots of credit to Malcolm Robinson for the information in this episode.
Thank you, Mr. Malcolm.
Now that that's out of the way, we can begin.
Let's get spooking.
It's 1960.
That was the door. No, the house painter has called and updated just as we were getting started. I've already forgotten, in 1640?
In 1960.
That's what I said. In 1960, a man.
I didn't even say, all I said was, it's 1960. And you forgot.
I remembered some of the numbers. So, please continue. It's 1960.
Yes, and we're in Sauchie, which is a small town east of Stirling.
Oh, okay.
So we're not in Glasgow.
No.
As you thought. East of Stirling. It's really not that far from where we've been on holiday. It's really close to Dollar and Rumbling Bridge.
Oh, okay. In and around there.
And we've been to both of those places. Mm-hmm. It's quite a small town. When I checked, about 6,000 people live in Sauchie.
Yep.
So it's not huge.
No.
And in 1960, Carol was 11. Just a young'un. And before she lived in Sauchie, she was living in Moville in County Donegal. I apologise if I'm saying Moville wrong. She lived in County Donegal with her parents. Mm-hmm. And she was the youngest sibling of a pretty big family. From what I saw, her siblings were considerably older than she was. She was 11, but many of them were adults who had moved out and now had families of their own.
Pretty cool.
Which is a completely different situation to how I grew up. So it's quite strange to read about.
Yeah, it's an unusual setup, isn't it?
They also had a dog called Toby.
Cute.
Which I think is adorable.
That's a good dog name.
From what I read, Carol and her family lived on a farm in Ireland. And for reasons that aren't clear, Carol's mother left Ireland for a job in Scotland.
Okay.
And she took Carol with her. But Carol's father stayed behind to run the farm. So the family became split.
Okay.
Across the two countries. Mm-hmm. Which, even if it was planned and it was something that they had to do, would be really traumatic.
Yeah, even if it was amicable, that would be really hard. Especially in the 60s, when communication isn't as easy as it is now.
Thankfully, from what I also read, it wasn't too long after that Carol's dad sold the family farm and joined them in Scotland.
Oh, that's nice.
So they weren't separated for long, but it's still a big life change.
Absolutely.
You're moving to a new country. She's had to leave her old life behind. Mm-hmm. And is now facing the prospect of starting over in a strange place. And as someone who moved a lot as a kid, it's really daunting and it's really scary having to start again.
Well, a whole new country. Like, I found it traumatic enough moving from one house in Liverpool to another house in Liverpool when I was like 6.
Just further down the street.
Yeah, literally just a couple of streets over, and I was like, ah!
I moved a lot growing up. I didn't like it.
Yeah.
So it's hard.
Yeah, not easy. Could set off a series of events leading to something spooky, perhaps.
How did you know? Carol's mother had found a job in Dollar, which is a town nearby, at a boarding house, which also provided her with somewhere to live. So she was staying where she was working. But Carol didn't live at the boarding house with her mother. She actually moved in with her older brother and his family.
Oh, okay.
Who lived in Sauchie. So that's how she ended up there.
Yeah.
She moved in with them into number 19 Park Crescent. And this is how that infamous address enters our story.
Ooh.
He had 2 children of his own, and Carol ended up sharing a room with her cousin. which was something she wasn't used to because she'd lived mostly as an only child because her siblings had moved out. She didn't have to share. So this is another thing that was different for her, that they were sharing a room.
Yeah, that'd be really weird.
I don't know if it's a good or a bad thing that happened for her, because I think siblings are good for you.
Yeah.
But it's a big change if you haven't had them.
Well, knowing you have them, but they're further away, and you don't see them often, but that they are still there. I feel that's different enough to being an only child, because you'd hear stories about them and stuff as well.
But to then have to come into the situation where you have to share everything all of a sudden.
Yeah.
It's very different to growing up with siblings. And
gone from living on a farm to living in a town. Mm-hmm. Presumably a farm and a farmhouse with a lot of space around it and things. It'd be tough. A tough transition.
So her life is completely different now, is what I'm trying to paint the picture of. That she's had this huge transition and there's a lot of adjusting needing to be done. But there were rumours even at this time that Carol and her mother didn't leave Ireland because her mum needed work. There were rumours that Carol and her mother had to flee Ireland.
Oh.
But Carol started going to school in Sauchie Primary School, which is the first stage of schooling in Scotland.
Yep.
You're there until you're 11. Mm-hmm. And by all accounts, she was shy, but she was otherwise really pleasant. She had friends and she was doing quite well. She just kind of kept to herself.
That's nice.
Kind of flew under the radar. Everything seemed good. Until Tuesday, the 22nd of November, 1960. Carol and her niece, who is close in age to her.
I was thinking, if you've got an older brother with kids, it must be weird to be similar age to your nieces and nephews.
I think I actually wrote cousin by mistake before.
I did wonder if you meant...
I did mean niece.
Niece or nephew.
But I autopiloted to cousin there. That was wrong. She's technically sharing a room with her niece, but
yes.
They're similar in age. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to call her Susan. They were both lying in bed. They had single beds from what I can see. And it was late. They had school in the morning. So this is a Tuesday night. And they were just beginning to drift off. They had gone to bed. They were settled. When Carol heard a noise.
Oh.
There was a banging coming from one of the bedroom walls. And she described it as sounding like someone was throwing a ball at the wall.
Yep.
And it was bouncing off. So I don't know if you've ever done that.
Yep, I can picture the sound.
That's the sound. But both of the girls were in bed. And no one else was in the room.
Mm.
And nothing had fallen, nothing was moving. But there was this noise. As if a ball was hitting the bedroom wall. Naturally, they were both scared. Because they had no idea where these noises were coming from.
Yep.
So the girls went downstairs to where Carol's brother and sister-in-law were relaxing, which I've heard is the joy of every parent of an evening once the children go to bed.
The highlight of someone's day, from what I've heard.
Yes, you can relax without the children being around just for a little while and revive yourself for facing them again in the morning. But as the girls scurried downstairs, the banging noise followed them.
Well, now that's unusual.
So it wasn't coming from the bedroom anymore where it had been. It was the same noise, but but the bangs were coming down every step. As if the ball that they had heard was now bouncing down each of the stairs behind them as they ran downstairs.
Yeah. Well, that's gotta freak you out, isn't it?
Well, it doesn't seem like a creepy thing. You know, like I heard a bouncy ball. But
yeah.
I feel like if you were going to make up a ghost story, you would make it scary.
Yeah, not that you were being haunted by some sort of bouncing slinky that was coming down the stairs after you.
So this almost creeps me out more because I don't know why you would make that up.
Yeah.
It's not like scratching and moaning, chains. Because what, they're kids.
I was pulled and thrown around the room. Or...
Do you know what I mean? The fact that this seems kind of benign creeps me out more because I'm like, what is that?
It's more believable, isn't it?
Why would you say that? So I don't know how you feel about that as the resident ham sandwich, but...
Yep. As the skeptic, I mean, I don't know. I guess I just don't believe they heard anything.
I guess.
But presumably something was banging.
Well, we're going to get into it.
Well,
this is only the start of the episode, Kieran.
This is not,
I have 28 pages of script, my man.
What page are we on?
5.
Oh, well, I better let you carry on.
The girls were now really scared and explained to the adults what they had heard, as well as the fact that the noise was following them as they came to tell them. But whatever I say the parents, they weren't Carol's parents, but the parents, whatever they said in return comforted the girls enough that they went back to bed. Or, alternatively, they were told that they'd have scalped arses if they didn't go back to bed.
Seems quite likely. I was just trying to imagine what kind of house it would have been in 1960 to picture it in my head, and remembered this house was built in 1960.
Mm-hmm. I have a picture of the outside if you would like to see it.
Oh, I would quite like to see that.
I put up on Instagram. It's the one that's on the cover of Malcolm Robinson's book, so you've probably seen it without clocking it, but I'll show you.
I've seen the stylised one on his cover.
It's pretty it's semi-detached. You've seen this style of house before.
Your standard
fairly common
house
across Scotland.
Yep, I like it. I
remember seeing that a lot, down in the Central Belt.
Yeah.
You can check it out on Generally Spooky Instagram. The girls went back to bed, got settled under the covers, and they're trying to drift off back to sleep, which I imagine is difficult because they've probably got adrenaline and all kinds of stuff flushing through them.
They're on a different hype train to the hype train I'm on right now.
Yes. But then Carol's headboard started banging against the wall.
She's too young for that to be happening.
Then Susan's headboard started doing the same thing.
Oh no.
While both the girls are in bed, not moving. Now, Susan's parents heard this racket and came upstairs to tell the girls to go to sleep.
Will you stop it?
Because in my imagination, that sounds like someone's jumping on the bed.
Yeah, totally.
If it's that old style of bed and headboard, you jump on the bed and it batters off the wall.
There's horseplay afoot.
Yes. Which, they're sharing a room, they don't want to go to bed. I think that's a fair assumption.
They've just run down saying they saw a ghost.
Yeah, you can imagine it.
Who gave them sherbet before bed? That kind of thing.
The parents enter the bedroom, but they see that both of the girls are lying in their beds, hidden under the covers, and they've scooched themselves away from the headboards. But the headboards are still bashing off the wall.
Oh, she sees it as well.
They all do.
Fuck.
Now, I can imagine being really freaked out at this point.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't even really know what to do.
No.
So the adults decided to let the girls sleep in another room in the house. Because they couldn't explain what was going on. The girls were really freaked. They're never going to sleep in there now. So they moved them for the night. Carol and Susan get settled into another room. But the headboards of these beds started making banging noises too.
Oh my days.
But it seems like it wasn't as loud as before, it wasn't as violent, and it stopped when Carol fell asleep.
Well, that's strange now, isn't it? I feel I would be so bamboozled by the sight of that if I walked in and these beds were shaking. I'd just walk over to the bed and just scooch it away from the wall. Before going...
Problem solved.
Wait. Or just grabbing the headboard to stop it banging. Being strange. There must be an earthquake.
That is 100% what you would do.
Yeah.
I have no doubts about that, even a little bit.
I was like, don't go in there. Why not? It's just banging. I just need to move it. There you go. It's not banging.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. Where are we?
She fell asleep.
Okay. After such a strange and hectic night, Carol didn't go to school the next day.
I mean, if anything deserves a day off, that's it.
Well, I mean, I could have been bleeding out my eyes and I wouldn't have gotten a day off school. I'm just going to tell you that right now. Never, not a million years. If I was breathing, I was going to school. But Carol got the day off. But I have to assume that... Anyway, I have to assume that they got up the next morning, and as you've had time to try and rationalise it in your brain, because you're saying that you would just stop it.
Yeah.
That you would go away and you would think, they must have been moving it. There must have been something.
Yeah, they must have been shaking it in the bed.
Yeah, or what happened here was the assumption that, Carol must be unwell. like, she's ill, so we'll keep her home from school. She's stressed. That's what's going on. I don't think you would immediately land on that was a ghost moving the bed.
Yes.
You would rationalise it while you were sleeping and while, you were calming down.
Yeah. I feel I would have started off rational and perhaps got more rational as time went past. And then when in the morning comes down for breakfast, I'm like, whoa, Carol, you're white as a ghost. And just like give you a wee elbow and you'd hit me.
You do make jokes a lot, that is true. I wonder if anyone else has picked up on that.
My joke telling abilities. Top notch joke making abilities.
So they kept her home from school in the hope that things would settle and she would calm down and she'd feel better. But things didn't quieten down as they hoped. And the family didn't get any time to de-stress and regroup. Because the next day, the Wednesday, furniture started moving. It was later in the evening and the whole family were sitting in the living room and one of their sideboards started levitating.
Levitating? Mm-hmm. No less. Not moving.
No.
Well, I mean, that's gonna be a bit off-putting, isn't it?
Yeah. They said that it sort of rose up off the floor and it came away from the wall. The whole family was just sitting watching this happen. It came away from the wall and then just moved back to where it was and dropped back down to the floor again.
See, apparently I just live in some sort of Monty Python sketch. I'm like, oh, well, that's nicer than to put it back. Carries on reading the paper.
But nobody moved. They were all just transfixed watching this happen. And no one was touching it. Carol wasn't touching it. She wasn't even anywhere near it.
Yeah.
But they watched this happen. And they were all very freaked out. At this point, I don't even know what I would do. I would maybe leave. Like, I might pack up Odin and just go to my dad's house.
Nope.
He's my resident problem solver. So I'll go see Dad. I'll get him to, like, nail the sideboard down.
Yeah.
And try and move on.
Yeah, I think I'd just be like, if we decided to stay in the house, you'd leave, and then the next time you come in, you just see I've put something really heavy. Like, put loads of dictionaries on top of the sideboard. I'm like, there we go, I should stop that.
I'll go get my wife now.
Safe, fixed it.
Unfortunately, after that, the knocking came back. The same as it had the night before. And this time it was in the living room that they were all sitting in. So it's moved again. And once again, there was no clear reason for the noise. No one could see what was causing it or where it was coming from even. It was coming from the walls and they couldn't explain it. Now, it got to about midnight on the Wednesday, the same evening. Mm-hmm. And the family was so scared, they reached out to a local minister at midnight. A man called Reverend Lund. That's Lund.
Yep.
I haven't come across his first name. Just his professional moniker.
That's fair. He might have wanted to keep it quiet a bit as well.
Maybe. So this is how scared they are. They're reaching out to someone at midnight that night.
How common do you think that is?
For reverends?
Reverends.
I don't know.
If there's anybody who is a reverend or is a family member who's a reverend or a priest or some such holy person, does that ever happen?
Well, my morbid assumption is that it must happen if someone's at death's door and you want last rites.
Yes, I think that's probably common somewhat. But, you know,
that's
like,
really important for some people.
Like, there's something spooky going on. Can you come and say a prayer in the house or something?
I don't know. I wonder how common it is.
Don't know.
I would be curious to know.
Yeah.
The reverend who came that night was the first of many official people and people outside of the family who experienced firsthand what the family had been talking about. More
compelling. More eyewitnesses, the better.
That sentence was for you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Now, it strikes me interesting that, he is a reverend. And as far as I'm aware, they don't hold with lying.
Yep.
I know some people will disagree with me.
Yeah.
You have this concept of him being genuine and not falsifying things for sensationalism.
Yeah, I feel there's nothing to gain necessarily from lying.
So it's interesting that his account is part of this story.
Yes, I like that. It adds a bit of compellingness to it.
Lund came to the house on their request. And it wasn't long before he heard the knocking that the family had told him about. He heard it for himself, and he searched the whole house thoroughly. And he couldn't find the cause for the knocking. All the family were in one room. Like, the girls hadn't disappeared and were causing shenanigans. They were all together. He searched through everything. He couldn't find anything. He could look at them, see they weren't doing anything, and the knocking would be happening at the same time somewhere else.
Bizarre.
And he actually went up to the bedroom that Carol and Susan had heard the banging coming from the night before. And a detail that Malcolm Robinson has in his book is that when the Reverend went into their room, he confirmed that the headboards weren't actually touching the wall, so they weren't flush. So the knocking hadn't been caused by a neighbour rattling or... Oh, yeah,
it wasn't the wall moving, so to speak, or like an impact against the wall.
Like, it wasn't close enough to the wall for something as light as that to move it, which I thought was interesting.
Yep.
That he verified that. What's really gross, which was another detail that Robinson noted, is that when the Reverend was there, Carol got really upset at all the noises. They were all up in their room at this point, and the Reverend's like checking the bed and stuff. And the Reverend made a joke to the effect that it was Carol's boyfriend making the knocking noises, and maybe she should knock back and it would stop. She's 11.
What? Well, I mean, I made a joke about knocking headboards already, so
He's a reverend.
Yeah, I'm a scoundrel. That's well documented
and she's
at this point.
in distress.
That's really strange. That's a strange thing to say.
Like, what the hell, man?
I hope he said that and then just sort of went, why did I say that?
I mean, I think he's dead now, but I'm still annoyed at reading it.
Yeah, that's a bit weird. Gives me the ick.
Yeah. So like I said, the family were in the bedroom at this point with the Reverend, who was checking everything out. And it was at this point that everyone in the room claimed that they saw the large linen chest at the bottom of Carol's bed start to move on its own.
It's just bizarre.
They said it was rocking back and forth by itself, and that it rose up off the floor just like the sideboard had done.
Crazy. It's very much like The Conjuring, the movie.
Yeah.
I watched a little while ago. I think it was last Halloween, actually.
There's a lot of that in The Conjuring story, I think.
Yeah, but there's lots of this kind of like moving stuff and rocking things.
Well, they moved the chest out of the room because the girls were scared.
Yep.
This is in their bedroom. But when they moved the chest out of the room, the knocking started again. So it just seems really chaotic and like everything's building and it's not stopping.
Yeah, nothing seems localised in the way you would expect. Like, it's not the chest that's the problem. Again, I'd be there taking out sheets going, a ghost!
Lunn suggested that the girls should try to go to bed because it was late, and he thought that getting some rest might calm them down because they were both quite upset.
They called him at midnight, didn't they? Yes.
They did. So I could see why that would make sense, because if you're exhausted, you're going to get more upset about stuff.
Yeah.
And then he suggested that like Susan hop into Carol's bed and they like look after each other, like, you'll be okay, don't worry.
Good plan.
But when he suggested that, the knocking got even louder.
Ooh, interesting.
And when Susan climbed into her own bed, the knocking completely stopped.
Curious.
It's now Thursday, the 24th of November.
Oh wow, this is a short space of time.
2 days later.
Yep.
Carol is off school again, naturally, because presumably they were up until like 2 a.m. at least. She's only 11.
They had a really late night being haunted last night. Do you think we should let them have the day off today?
Oh, I'm just wiped.
Can you imagine that?
All this spooking.
Can you imagine getting that sick note as like the registration teacher? Please excuse Carol from school today. She was up late being haunted by a ghost.
Related to that, but not related to the story, one of my friends in high school asked her dad if she could get a sick note for PE because she just didn't want to do PE. And her dad said, yeah, I'll do that for you, no problem. So she was elated because she was fine. He wrote out this note for her and she took it in, gave it to the PE teacher when we had PE that day. And she opened it and read it and started laughing. And she's like, what? Well, like, I'm too sick, I can't do PE. And then it was after that she found out her dad had said that she couldn't do PE today because she shrinks in the rain. So she can't go outside.
Well, the big question, did she have to do PE?
Yeah.
Top quality.
I've forgotten that until now. It was so funny. Even she was laughing. She couldn't believe he did it.
Nice. I like that.
Anyway. It's Thursday the 24th of November. And it's at some point before this, it's not clear exactly when, that Carol's dad had moved to the area. Because I said earlier that he sold the farm at some point and he joined them. Mm-hmm. So it's sometime before the Thursday he's done this. Because on the Thursday, he visits his son's house where Carol was staying.
Yes.
And I'm assuming her parents would have heard what happened by this point. Because they called a reverend.
Yeah, you have to assume they've been kept up to date.
Right. I just don't have dates for when he actually made the move. But he was at the house on the Thursday. And Carol's dad saw for himself what the rest of the family were scared of. So this is another person coming in and seeing what they're talking about. In Robinson's book, he says that Carol's dad saw an apple levitating out of a fruit bowl.
An apple?
Yeah, and for some reason this makes me think of the Matilda movie, you know, when she has everything flying around. And I don't really know why, it's just what popped into my head.
Well, when it could have been like a knife floating, just an apple seems quite innocent, really.
Mm-hmm. I can't remember, maybe she does it like on the teacher's desk or something in the film.
Oh, remember. Yeah.
But Carol's dad also saw a sewing machine turn on all by itself, with no one sitting at it. Now, my knowledge of sewing machines is minimal. But from my understanding, at least with some of them, you have to have your foot on a pedal to make it go.
Interesting.
I think. Maybe that's only one type.
Maybe.
If you are a sewist, you can let me know, because I don't know how to sew, so I have no idea. But that's something more tangible than something like maybe looking like it's floating for some reason.
Totally, yep.
This machine is turning on and going with no one using it.
So what happened next?
Well, what happened next is Reverend Lund came back again that night, the Thursday night, and he wasn't alone this time. This is the first time that a doctor visits the house and visits Carol, a man called Dr. Nisbet.
I mean, I briefly thought, why a doctor? But why not a doctor?
Well, who else are you going to call?
I know, you just try the doctor.
Ghostbusters.
Get like a policeman over, why not? Get your nan, just get everybody, see what you can get done here.
Exactly. I would feel comforted having a doctor, I think.
Yeah.
And I also think that this gives the story a bit of weight, because certainly like in the 60s, I feel like, you know, a doctor was a well-respected person in the community. Mm-hmm. You're not going to call them unless you need them.
Yeah, I think that seems fair.
Like, and just generally, like, it's not a nice thing to waste a doctor's time because they might be helping someone else.
They're probably busy.
You know? So I feel like this gives it a bit of weight because it's a doctor.
Yep.
But that's just my opinion. The family and the two men, the Reverend and the doctor, were the audience to even more spectacles that night that they couldn't explain. They watched Carol's pillow that she was lying on spin under her head completely on its own.
That's an image.
And it was reported that it spun about 60 degrees in Robinson's book.
Okay.
But her hands were nowhere near it. And I'm assuming that they could see she wasn't just dragging it with her head.
Yeah.
I feel like you would be able to tell.
Yeah, or just have her arms up like, oh my God, what's happening?
You know?
If it happened to Susan's pillow, would that be a lazy Susan? I've had that joke, like, since you said Susan, I'm like, ooh.
Really?
How could I get lazy Susan into this episode?
Without just being a dick.
Oh, well, I'm not too worried about that. I'm just...
There was lots more knocking from all over the place, all over the house. The linen chest was moving again, just like it had done the previous night. And they all reported hearing a sawing noise.
That's unusual.
I feel that's pretty distinctive.
Yeah.
Because I feel like if someone was using a saw, even a manual one, you would know what that sounds like. Mm-hmm. Because it's very grinding and like toothy almost, like you can
It's got a
hear
very
it.
distinct sound.
Because my thought was, oh well, maybe you would what's the word? What's the word?
Is it the bird?
Well, like maybe you would hear the linen chest moving around on the floor and think that was a sawing noise, even though it's not. If it was wood on wood. But they probably had carpet in the bedroom.
Yeah,
Because it's the 60s. I feel like that was the done thing.
Seems quite likely. There's not a lot you can mistake a sawing for, I don't think.
No, I don't think so. So again, to me, it's the specific detail. It's confusing.
I wonder if you were I wonder if you were a person very attuned to the spirits and the ghosts and whatnot, and you could feel that there was this spirit here in your house wrecking shit, but they were friendly, would you just leave them to it?
No, they're wrecking shit and scaring my kids.
Well, and like assuming it was just you and they weren't.
I'd be like, hey, wind your fucking neck in.
Like it was just you in this house and your sideboard starts to levitate and you just glance over at it and go, can you just put that down please? And then just get back to whatever you're doing.
I mean, that's probably the ideal situation.
And they just put it down again.
But if, like when we've had Ramona staying, our friend's baby, like if she was getting scared by shit like that, I wouldn't, if I could feel a ghost and it was just doing it for
shits
fun,
and gigs.
Like, no, you're scaring the baby.
Stop it. Yeah, I'm just curious. Like if you just let them be, or they were just knocking, so you just put headphones in or earplugs.
Nope.
Yeah. Shh. We're sleeping just now. The knocking stops.
It's quiet time. One of the weirder things that they apparently saw that night, again, had to do with Carol's bed. And she was in bed at the time, like I said, with the pillow thing. But they said she was holding her covers up tight to her chin because she was scared.
Yep.
But all the adults in the house saw her covers rippling on their own.
Creepy.
And I'm taking that to mean like the surface of water.
Yes. Like somebody's flapping them.
Yeah, but not that violently. In Robinson's book, it says that it was the top bed cover that was rippling. So I don't know if that's a blanket or if that's the duvet.
Yeah, hard to
or
say.
just the duvet cover. I'm not sure. I wanted to make that clear. I don't really know
the distinction. Call me crazy. This seems to be all centering around Carol.
I think you might be right.
Like, is that too out there? Like, I think from what you've told me, that could be the case.
You're like a detective.
I know. Kieran, ghost detective.
How do you feel about it all so far?
It's very spooky. I'm enjoying the story and the mystery. I'm wondering how much has been embellished over time, or if it happened at all. Was it an experiment in LSD in the tap water? Getting some crazy visuals on things.
It seems like typical poltergeist behaviour.
Yes.
Now, when you hear about a poltergeist, it's mayhem and mischief and things moving and noise. And ghosts don't always do that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's unusual to have this much interaction with things of this plane.
I was going to do it later, but I can talk a little bit about the difference between a ghost and a poltergeist, because I looked into it.
Sure.
There is apparently a difference.
I was about to say who decided, but there's two different words, so obviously someone decided at some point.
Well, I think everyone who's ever talked about poltergeists has said this, but the name poltergeist comes from German, and it basically means noisy ghost.
I learned that from Most Haunted last night.
See, like it comes up all the time, but in case you didn't know that, that's where the name comes from. And it seems to be the difference is that ghosts they can be seen and they might haunt a place or have specific links to that place or something that happened to them, in my expert opinion.
Yep.
But poltergeists are different because, according to what I've read, the place might not be significant. It's feelings and emotions and energy they feed off of.
To bring forth the Poltergeist.
Yeah.
That's my German accent, thank you.
So like they feed off that, and that drives them, and you probably won't see a poltergeist, but you'll see what they do and how they disrupt everything.
Yeah, totally.
I read an article that described poltergeist as, quote, a mass form of energy that a living person is controlling unknowingly, unquote.
Oh, okay. A living person is controlling unknowingly. Interesting.
Which I can understand, because lots of poltergeist cases have teenagers, especially teenage girls, associated with them.
Oh, that's unusual.
And if you've either met or been a teenage girl, you know that there's a lot going on there.
I prefer not to meet any teenage girls. Too scary.
They are quite scary. I'm saying that having been one, they are quite scary. So remember, Carol's 11, and she's just about at that age, and she's going through a really emotional and disruptive time in her life. So I can see the connections happening here.
And if you'll recall, the knocking stopped after she fell asleep. I've been paying attention.
You picked up on that, did you? You picked up on that, did you?
I've been paying attention.
We'll talk about possible explanations and theories and things at the end. I have a few gathered for you to peruse. But I thought we'd touch on that just now.
I appreciate it. I like hearing it. It's a very visual story so far. I can very much picture everything that's been described, which I enjoy.
It's now Friday the 25th of November, 1960. All the strange things started happening on Tuesday. So we're now on Friday, the end of the week. And Carol hasn't been at school since Tuesday.
Yeah.
She's been off for nearly a whole week, and she hadn't long started at school. So it was decided that she would go back to school on the Friday.
Seems fair.
It makes sense to me, because it's just one day. So if you were hoping she was going to recover and kind of get back into a normal routine, okay, you go on the Friday, it's just one day and then it's the weekend. You can manage that and we'll see how you get on.
And you have to draw the line somewhere.
Right?
I think that's fair. Very reasonable.
So it makes sense to me. But going to school didn't improve anything. If anything, things started getting worse. Carol was in class, a class overseen by a woman called Miss Stewart.
Very nice.
Which is a familiar name to me.
Yep.
And everyone was working away at their individual desks.
Yes.
Remember, this is the 60s.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone had their own desk that had lids on them.
Yep.
And everyone was working. Everyone was quiet. But before long, everyone realised that something seemed to be wrong with Carol.
They didn't just look over and she was floating 10 feet in the air? Or...
No, and her head wasn't spinning.
That's good.
From the outside, it looked as if Carol was trying to wrestle her desk. She was working really hard to hold the lid of her desk down, seemingly to stop it from popping up.
Yep.
And before long, the teacher noticed.
What are you doing?
Naturally, exactly. And she was wondering why Carol was messing about instead of working, because remember, she was fairly quiet and just got on with stuff.
Perfectly valid question.
But even though Carol claimed she wasn't misbehaving, she wasn't doing anything, Miss Stewart made her stop mucking about with the desk. And when Carol moved her arms away, the lid flew open on its own and began to bang up and down in front of the whole class.
In front of the whole class?
And she wasn't touching it.
Damn.
Because she had been told to leave it alone.
That's a sight.
So this is more people privy to what's going on with her.
Can we talk to any of these people? Not literally talk to them right now, but have these people been talked to? Can we verify?
Yes, Malcolm Robinson talked to a few people who were in class with her in the book. And he gathered a lot of quotes and interviews with the people who saw it firsthand.
Interesting.
So that information is out there, and I have a little bit of it in here. So follow-up was done, if that was your question.
Yes.
Eventually the banging stopped, everything went quiet, and they all just carried on with the lesson.
That's what I've talked about before, about the witches and Terry Pratchett. That if something's just too beyond your comprehension, your brain just goes, yeah, we'll just carry on, shall we?
I didn't see that.
No. That was odd. Anyway, back to addition. Back to my multiplication tables.
Later that same day, when a different child got up from their desk Their desk levitated off the ground.
That's not what you want?
Nope. Reports say it rose off the ground by at least a couple inches before just settling back to where it was before.
Oh, they put it down gently. That's nice
just like the sideboard, just like the linen chest. Something we've heard before.
Yep.
But one of Carol's classmates who spoke to Malcolm Robinson for his book, he claimed that the desk actually lifted 6 or 7 feet in the air, not inches. But he also used the word demonic to describe what he'd seen. So he was far more panicked and scared in his attitude to anyone that I've come across so far.
Yeah, rather than just watching this desk float into the air and then just putting a hand on it and just putting it down on the ground again. No. Kind of like catching a helium balloon.
I was just going to say that.
Again.
It sounds like bringing a balloon down someone who can't reach it. Now, a lot of the things I've read say that the things that were happening to her at school are strange in terms of poltergeist activity.
Yep.
Because very rarely does the activity follow a person across different places. So it's unusual that it was it's not unusual it was centering around Carol, but it's unusual that it happened at home and then happened at school, which are 2 different places.
Yeah, okay.
That's just what I've read. I don't know either way, but apparently that is unusual.
Well, I like to have a set of rules around ghosts and things. It's not that they can just do whatever they want whenever they want. Like if they were to exist, they would have to exist within boundaries and rules. So I like that as a rule to be broken.
Now, I don't know what you think. Do you think if this happened to you
Personally.
at school, assuming that this is genuine and this really did happen, would it make you the coolest person at school, or would it make you a pariah?
Ooh.
Like, is it cool or is it not cool?
I think, this will sound very big-headed, but I think I could have made it cool.
You're right, that does sound big-headed.
Yeah, right? Because I think if you were really freaked out and brought it up all the time, everyone would just be like, shut up, what are you talking about? Who wasn't there? Or even if you were sat in front and this happened behind you and you didn't see it. But if you didn't make a big deal out of it, people would talk about it happening to you without you bringing it up, which would make it cool.
Yeah, I just wondered, because kids are funny.
Yeah. So I think it would depend how the person was. Because if they're a bit manic and crying all the time, you're like, oh, what a drama queen.
Or would you? Or would you get caught up in the hype?
Maybe.
Like a hysteria.
Yeah, maybe that's just how I would react to different people.
Because in my mind, I think if it happened and you were upset about it and you were getting all this attention, very soon 6 other poltergeists would appear in the classroom.
Oh, yes. That seems very likely.
That was what I thought.
Yeah. Oh my god, a poltergeist totally was in my house last night.
Yeah, or oh my god, he just threw my pencil across the room.
Yeah, bing!
You know?
Yes.
That's how I thought it would go.
And it would quickly descend into chaos, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yep, I like it.
I just know kids are weird, so I didn't know if it would make you cool or if it would make you lame.
I don't know. Strange.
Unfortunately for Carol, all the activity continued over the weekend. And there were even reports that Carol had gone into a trance at one point and was calling out for her best friend that she had left behind in Ireland and her dog, Toby.
That's a shame.
She was really upset and she wanted her dog.
Yeah.
Which broke my heart.
Yeah, no matter what I believe about what was happening, that's a shame to hear.
Yeah. The weekend passed. Monday came. Carol was back at school, which you have to imagine made her teacher a little bit nervous. It made me nervous.
What fresh hell does this week have in store?
Do I not have enough to do?
Yeah.
And a whole bunch of things happened to poor Carol once again. She was called up to the front of the class to the teacher's desk, but when she got there, Miss Stewart's blackboard pointer started vibrating on her desk, completely on its own. And it vibrated so hard, it was really loud buzzing, that it fell off the desk. And then the desk started vibrating.
So bizarre.
And then, just like what happened before, Miss Stewart's desk reportedly levitated, turned in the air before being set back down again.
I've been dulled by horror movies, so you expect it to float in the air and then be thrown against a wall where it smashes into 1,000 pieces.
It's not a James Wan movie.
Yeah, so just for it to be picked up, gently spun and then put down again.
But what creeps me out is that it's almost consistent.
Yes.
Like that's happened over and over again, which I think is creepy, even if it is mild by your standards.
Yeah.
It's creepy.
It is creepy.
And again, Carol wasn't touching it, the teacher wasn't touching it, and everyone in the class was watching it happen.
I'd laugh if it was just the eraser, the chalkboard?
It was the pointer.
Oh, the pointer, sorry. Started rattling, and the teacher sat at the desk just kind of looking at it, glance up to see if anybody else has noticed, and then just picking it up.
And putting it in her handbag.
Maybe.
To take home.
What for?
You know, just girl stuff.
Maybe just picking it up so the noise stops, and the class just carries on undisrupted.
I can imagine you doing that to stop them getting upset.
Yeah, and to stop the both euphoria and panic.
Yeah.
So they just like... I'm just kind of holding it, I don't know, just like pointing at something.
Oh,
and
it
then
must have been a train.
Yeah. And then like putting it on the floor or in a drawer.
Yeah.
I don't really know where else you could put a pointer.
Malcolm Robinson wrote in his book that his cousin was in that class that day.
Oh.
And she confirmed all of this to him, that she remembered these things happening. And she went further and said that she saw like loose papers flying around the room.
It's so bizarre, isn't it? Mm-hmm. How so many people's memory can, I was going to say be altered, but be different.
Yeah.
To each other's.
There were other rumours that at some point there was a music lesson in which the cover for the piano keys, you know, the little thing, was slammed down on a music teacher's fingers.
Oh, that would be sore.
But there are other people who went to Sauchie Primary School who say that they didn't get music lessons, so this isn't true.
It's bizarre.
So there's both.
Yeah.
Another rumour is that the blinds would go up and down on their own, but some people say the classrooms didn't have blinds, so that couldn't have happened.
Strange.
And there's another rumour that there was a boy who saw all of this happening and then projectile vomited.
That one seems likely.
Yeah, I feel like that could just happen.
Yeah.
Because kids.
Kids just throw up randomly.
But I don't know if I like the suggestion people have put that he was possessed and that's why he was sick.
Yeah, it seems like he could have been sick and then they've back put in the reason why.
Yeah, like I don't know. Because kids just eat shit.
Yeah.
Apparently, Carol was particularly upset after school this day. Because remember, she's only 11.
It's a lot to take.
Well, even just having all that attention on you would be uncomfortable at that age. I wouldn't like it. And that's before you get to the upset and the fear and
totally
all that stuff. So it was on this Monday that, and this is the 28th by this point, that Carol was sent to stay with an aunt who lived in Dollar. Because remember I said that was nearby. That's where Carol's mother was working and staying. Like it. And everyone thought it would be good for Carol to get some distance from what was going on. Maybe a change of scenery would calm her down. So she was sent away for a few days just to get some peace.
I like it.
But even at her aunt's house, she was still surrounded by knocking.
Do you think she's just getting used to it? Oh yeah, that follows me around. Sorry, Aunt.
I mean, I guess you'd have to. Like, you would adjust.
Yeah, because you can normalise things really quickly.
But I feel like even if you were normalising it before that, I think the fear would reignite because it's following you.
Yeah.
Even here. So regardless of what you'd gotten used to before, this is new.
Yes. Oh no.
The next day, Tuesday the 29th of November, I'm sorry, apologies if saying the date gets annoying, it's easier for me to keep track of where we are.
I like it.
In Dollar, Carol was visited by two more doctors, a husband and wife team called William and Sheila Logan.
Very nice.
They were both doctors, and they both lived in Dollar. And I think they were just called to check on Carol. I don't think it was purely for the activity. I think it was to try and calm her down.
Well, you can imagine, I don't like the word, but you can imagine her being a bit hysterical.
Well, yeah, just like upset and like if you're in that kind of state, you might not be sleeping properly.
No, and just in that like really hyped state of kind of like unease and panic. And
so she wasn't unwell in the beginning. She may be unwell now.
Yeah. And leave you unwell. I think that's fair to say.
So these are now more trusted, responsible adults in her life who go to see her and see the same things that she sees and hear the same things that she hears. They heard the knocking, they heard all the noises when they went to the house in Dollar, and they couldn't explain them either. They went to pretty great lengths to try and suss out what it was.
Mm-hmm. Well, you would. Like, oh, what's that knocking? Like, oh, I'll figure it out.
Yeah. But Malcolm Robinson, he spoke to Sheila Logan for the book. I think he put the book together for the 60th anniversary in 2020.
Okay.
So it's fairly recent that he was speaking to these people. And he spoke to her and he was asking her for details about the two homes, because I think they visited her in Dollar and they visited the house in Sauchie.
Oh, yes, yep.
And she was saying that she couldn't explain it, but she wasn't scared. Mm-hmm. I think she took a very pragmatic attitude to it, that she just couldn't explain it. It was strange, but she didn't feel uneasy, but she didn't have an answer.
Yeah, that sounds kind of how I would feel. I can feel with that.
But she didn't say it didn't happen.
Yeah.
And I read that and it kind of gave me a little jolt in my stomach, just like, oh, like, that's such a practical way to approach it. Like, I believe you.
Yeah. How much relief must it have brought Carol every time somebody else heard it? Because you'd start to worry you were crazy, wouldn't you? If you were hearing all these things that you knew couldn't be true.
Well, I felt when we got back from Greyfriars Kirkyard and I heard that whisper in my ear, and like you just looked at me like I was mental.
And yeah.
It's a horrible feeling because I heard it was like you had done it.
Yep.
It was awful.
Spooky.
So I can't imagine being in her position where it's happening all the time.
Yeah.
Later that same day, later in the days that followed, William Logan, the other doctor,
yep,
he took Carol's pulse.
Yes.
At one point in Dollar, I think, when she was particularly upset. And I think it would be fair to say that at this point, she could be described as hysterical because she was crying, she was panicked.
Yeah.
Really upset. He took her pulse and he said that her heart rate was completely normal.
That's strange.
And he couldn't explain it because she definitely should have had a heightened heart rate. Even if she was putting it on, the exertion would have raised her heart rate.
Yeah, totally.
But completely normal.
Well, that's weird.
And he couldn't explain it.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if this was the same occasion, but there was a night where she was prescribed some mild tranquilizers to calm her down because she was upset. And even after she had been sedated, the activity continued. Which was strange because if Carol was doing these things, they would have abated when she was sedated.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, if she was secretly knocking somehow or something.
Yeah. Or if you imagine a scenario where she's willing it to happen. She's not fully conscious because she's under medication.
That's weird.
But it continued.
That's really weird.
See, it's all kind of piling up and becoming something quite strange.
I'm sure we're going to get to it, but I'm really curious how this comes to a head. Because is this still happening? And she's just in her house surrounded by knocking, just been like, oh, I've got such a headache from this.
It's like tinnitus.
Yeah. So can you just put that dresser down?
Put that down.
Yeah.
No antiques in her home at all.
Yeah. Lying trying to sleep and somebody's just wafting your duvet. I'm like, oh, can you just not?
Thursday rolled around. So this is a week and 2 days.
Yep.
Carol's family didn't really know what to do.
Fair.
It had been going on for days and they just wanted things to go back to normal for Carol and for themselves. So they brought in just about everyone they could. There was Dr. Nisbet, who'd come the first time, and Dr. Logan, William Logan, who had attended Carol before. And Reverend Lund, he came to the house in Sauchie again.
Yep.
And they were joined also by 3 ministers from the Church of Scotland.
Very nice, very nice.
A different church to Reverend Lund from what I understand, because a reverend, I think, is Catholic.
Got you. Yep.
Church of Scotland is Protestant.
Yes.
So there's several people at the house.
Fight it on all fronts.
Yes. And in Robinson's book, he says that the 3 ministers came to perform quote, a divine intercession service, unquote. And they later stressed this was not an exorcism, but a completely separate service.
Interesting.
I had no idea what this meant. I'd never heard of a divine intercession service.
Nope, that's new to me.
I looked up what I could, but it's very, very vague.
Yes.
Intercession is when you pray on behalf of someone else.
Okay.
From what I can see. You might pray to ease someone's suffering, or you might pray on behalf of someone you don't like or don't agree with. That's really all I could find.
Yep.
I saw some places online where divine intercession is linked with exorcism. There's a really dodgy looking site that claims to offer help with this service. And they talk a lot about divine intercession, and I really wish that we had some kind of VPN when I look into sites like this, because it was really dodgy and kind of cult-like. I didn't like it.
That's not something you should buy online, is it?
No. I even ended up on Catholic.org at one point.
Yep.
Which is a real website. And I found all kinds of exorcism prayers. It's a huge, extensive list of them, and it was a really deep rabbit hole that I spent like an afternoon in. And I really wish I hadn't. So the summary is, I don't really know what a divine intercession service is.
Do you think it's a Protestant version of a Catholic exorcism?
I don't know. My guess is that if what they did was even vaguely exorcism-y, then they were purposely vague about it. Because I think the church would want to distance themselves from things like that.
Yeah, I feel it's not something they want to talk widely and loudly about.
No, because I know that there's some Catholic ministers who become certified exorcists. That's a thing. You go to the Vatican and you get qualified in exorcisms. I don't know if that's the same thing with the Church of Scotland. I doubt it.
Honestly, not sure.
But I really couldn't find much.
No.
So it was very vague.
That's curious.
So that's what they were doing. It was on the same evening that Dr. Nisbet and Dr. Logan came back, like I said before. But this time they brought a tape recorder. And they brought a Cinecamera, which is like an old-fashioned video camera.
Very nice.
You know, like in King Kong, they're like...
Yeah.
It's got the handle. It looks a bit like that. And they recorded audio and video while they were with Carol. She was back in the Sauchie house at this point.
Yep.
And I tried to find them.
Oh,
and
that
I
would have been
couldn't.
so good.
And I read in Robinson's book that he tried to find the recordings and he had a really difficult time. In the end, he got them from the BBC, from their archives.
Oh, interesting.
And he was, back in 2020 and earlier, playing them for people who went to his lecture on the topic. So he has permission to share the recordings.
Ooh, that's cool.
But I wouldn't be able to do that.
No. That's smart, though.
But these exist.
I suppose that the problem with it being like an audio recording is like, oh my god, who did that?
Kind of, yeah. Well, in the recordings, you can hear the knocking.
Yep.
That had been talked about, so you can hear them in the tape. And they go on for quite a while, but then you hear Carol calling for her mum in a really scared voice. Like Robinson described it as her screaming out. I don't think you could put that on.
No.
They also heard rasping and the sawing noises. So it all sounds a bit nightmarish.
Yeah, it's just the phrase like "it's a wee shame" comes into my head.
You feel for her.
Yeah, because that would be very confusing and like disturbing as an adult. So to be doing that as an 11-year-old in a foreign country.
This is why I wanted to change your name.
Yeah.
Now, I actually read... Sorry, it's my water bottle. I read that Dr. Logan, William Logan, actually said later when he was talking about his experiences that some of the noises that came from around Carol sounded like being inside an MRI machine.
That's not what I expected.
Right?
They are meant to be very noisy.
I mean, I could try and find a little clip of what that sounds like.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
I don't have one ready, but I could try.
Yeah.
Now, I've never been in an MRI machine.
No, that's strange, isn't it?
So I don't know how accurate that is.
That's true. Maybe that was just something totally else.
But that was what he said. He said it sounded like being inside an MRI machine, and he couldn't explain it.
Yeah.
Because that was the only thing that he could think to compare it to. And I think in Robinson's book, he said that he had recently had an MRI scan, and that's why it was in his head, because it reminded him of that.
Very bizarre.
But from here, everything just started calming down.
Oh. Well, I was going to say I'm disappointed, but I'm disappointed for the story, but I'm glad for Carol's sake.
There were still odd things that happened, but they were much less frequent, and they just kind of accepted them, and Carol just went about her life more normally, accepting that occasionally these things happened. Like, sometimes they still happened at school.
Yeah.
But they just went on. And by March 1961, so 3 or 4 months after everything started, everything went quiet. But Carol was reunited with her dog,
Yay!
Toby, which is the best news of the whole episode.
That is nice.
Yeah, everything went quiet.
That's strange. That's really strange.
Right?
Yeah. Ooh.
Again, though, from what I was reading, this is quite typical for poltergeist stories.
Oh, yeah?
That they're usually quite short-lived.
They just come, fuck shit up for a bit and then leave.
And it's quite typical for, like, a couple months and then it's over.
That's bizarre.
But the reason that I found out about this story, and kind of what makes it different from maybe your run-of-the-mill poltergeist story, is the involvement of the media.
Oh, did they go a bit wild?
Oh, boy.
A bit feral?
The newspapers loved this story.
Yeah.
And it makes sense, especially for tabloids, that, like, young girl terrorised by demonic spirit. You can see the headlines. And Robinson talks a lot about this in his book. And he included quite a few of the full-length actual articles that were published at the time.
Oh, yeah.
Which was really useful. So I want to credit him again for that, because these were invaluable.
Yep.
And he claims that the first newspaper story came out on the 2nd of December, which was the day after the recordings had been taken.
Okay, yep.
So it's just, like, things are just quietening down.
Oh, yeah, because it was 22nd of November is when things started.
Yes, and then the recordings were taken on the 1st of December.
Okay.
So the first newspaper story came out on the 2nd. You with me?
Yep.
And the Alloa Journal and the Alloa Advertiser published a lot of articles about Carol, and they were, like, 2 local papers. But national papers jumped on before long. And the way that some of the journalists conducted themselves about this is one of the reasons I want to change Carol's name, because it was fucking disgusting. They did some really ridiculous and horrible things to try and get dirt on the story.
Oh, no.
Like, they were making up lies to be allowed into Carol's home.
Ooh.
This is a home with children in it.
Yeah.
She's 11.
That is fucked up.
And they're saying they're, like, different people, or these reasons why they need to come in, and they didn't. They were taking photos on the fly of the family, even though they had been told expressly that the family didn't give their permission to have their photo taken.
Grim.
So they're, like, stalking them. Some private family letters were published between Carol's parents.
What?
They published them in full. It's really bad.
That's messed up.
Especially because this is a story about a child.
Yeah.
They even tried hounding Carol at school.
Oh.
They'd wait outside the school building to try and talk to her. And Robinson talks about how her family felt like prisoners in their own home.
Well, that would almost mess you up more than
Yeah.
the poltergeist would.
Like, they were followed whenever they left the house, so they couldn't go anywhere. And it was so bad that a local church committee actually went so far as to have a meeting and suggest that an inquiry be held by them into the actions of the press, that then they could bring to the press association or press committee, basically the governing body at the time. They would have their own inquiry and bring the results to them, be like, you should be taking action because this is having a really adverse effect on a child.
Yeah, this is not a good way to behave.
No, they were sickened and they felt something should be done. A man called Reverend Campbell actually asked, quote, "Of what help were the swarms of reporters that descended on Sauchie like one of the plagues of Egypt?"
Jeez, oh.
Which was biblical, and I like it.
I know, I like that.
But just imagine, like, and it happens today, like, nothing's changed at all.
No. That's still the case, and still the suffering that a lot of families who are going through tragedy have to face.
Families where one of their family members or someone they care about has been affected by anything to do with true crime. See the families of murder victims, they get treated appallingly.
Ugh.
It's disgusting.
Yeah.
And I know this isn't that severe. No one died here, but you're having a huge impact on someone's life.
Yeah, it's just using someone you don't know for your own benefit.
They're real people. They're still people.
Yeah. Blech.
So I want to include that because I thought it was outrageous when I was reading it. And the Iowa Advertiser, I think I'm remembering rightly, actually issued an article justifying the articles that they had published, but also condemning the actions of the national papers. Because when they were talking about the story, they didn't publish her name, they didn't publish the address, all kinds of things to try and safeguard her as a child.
Yeah.
But the national papers published her full identity and address.
And there's no putting it back in the box.
There's not, and it's also not a crime to do that.
Oh.
That's still okay.
Oops.
Like, in some cases it's advised you shouldn't, but on the whole, there's nothing wrong with doing that.
That is horrendous.
So the Advertiser came out and said, well, we thought it was prudent to publish the article, but they didn't do it at length.
Yeah.
And they had boundaries in place to try and protect the family, which other papers ignored.
Oh, God. No.
So again, I'm like, well, I don't want to be part of that, so...
Yeah.
Changing her name, all this stuff.
Yeah. And she's not at that address anymore.
Exactly. She's not there anymore. She's an adult now, but it felt icky, I don't want to be a part of that.
I wonder if the people currently at that address, presumably there's still a house there that somebody lives at, if they get people like coming to the door and be like, oh, is this like where the Poltergeist was? And they're like, what are you talking about?
We're going to talk about it.
Oh. I beg your pardon?
Sometime after the Sauchie haunting, I don't know exactly when, Carol and her family moved, as you would expect. It seems like they travelled to Bedford in England, and they lived there. They moved. And there were claims that the poltergeist activity started happening again after they moved down in Bedford. A woman who knew Carol when they lived in Bedford said that she was having problems for a couple months after they moved, and then it eventually just died down again, and no one talked about it anymore.
Imagine that happening. Oh, not this again. Just seeing your furniture floating around. Like, well, they normally put it in gently, so it doesn't matter.
And I think Malcolm Robinson tried to get in touch with Carol for the book and got in touch with like her aunt and various people, but they don't want to talk to anyone. So I haven't tried.
Quite right.
But yeah, they moved and that was kind of that.
That was that.
So it's all over, right?
Yes.
Story's done?
Story's done.
Poltergeist was beaten back, sent back to hell. Yeah.
Yep. Good episode. Thank you. This was the Generally Spooky podcast. Sign up to Patreon. Blah, 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 blah.
Wrong.
Oh, I didn't see it coming.
Carol was not the last or only person to feel haunted on Park Crescent in Sauchie.
Ooh.
See, you just jumped the gun. You must know my usual structure for an episode.
I always do.
So that it pops into your head at the right time.
I must know what to expect. Maybe I'm psychic.
Maybe. Psychic ham sandwich.
Kieran, psychic detective.
Is that a ham sandwich with a crystal ball? Or it's like a really richly coloured scarf. Carol stayed at number 19.
Yes.
When they lived there. The family who lived at number 17, so 2 doors down, in the 1970s, experienced strange things there after Carol had left.
Interesting.
The son, who was living at number 17, remembered that sockets used to fly out of the walls, doors would open and close, and he would hear scratching noises and have eerie feelings.
That's pretty weird. It's pretty weird. It's pretty spooky.
Malcolm Robinson spoke to this man.
Oh, yeah.
Because he's now a man, not a boy.
Yep.
Who had lived there. And it's in the book, he included it. But the man that he talked to actually said that at one point he was floating down the stairs, unable to scream for help.
That's a bit full on, isn't it?
How creepy is that?
Oh. When all you could do is presumably he got put down at the bottom and had to get up and go back up the stairs and go to bed.
I think so. He would also hear footsteps as if someone was running around the house, but when he go to check, there was no one there, which is really creepy.
It is really creepy.
And his mother was also aware of all the activity. She heard things and saw things, but she said that it didn't bother her, that she didn't feel threatened.
Yeah.
It's kind of what you were saying
That's what I was
earlier.
saying,
they just got on with it.
Well, because it's just footsteps.
Well, and you can't really just move. Like,
No.
I know a lot of people wonder, oh, well, if it's that scary and then you should move. It's like, well,
Well, if you financially
can't.
can't, yeah.
It's not always an option.
It's not an easy solution to just move.
No, it's super expensive to move house. And if you're in, this is UK specific or even Scotland specific, but if you're in a council house,
Yeah.
you can't really just do that because you have to have a reason.
Probably been given it.
So it's not as easy as just leaving. So that was a different home to Carol's home. But the activity was rekindled at number 19, which was Carol's house, many years after she left.
Interesting. I thought 17 could potentially be the house beside, because sometimes it's 17 on one side, 18 on the other side.
I checked.
Did you?
It's not.
Okay.
It's 2 doors down.
Okay.
I did check. The family who moved into number 19 in 2003 claimed to experience some really weird things. They saw apparitions, which is different to poltergeist activity.
Yes.
If you'll remember.
Yep.
And they said that the atmosphere of the whole place just felt strange and off. And the mother of the family noticed her son's bed covers changing colour.
That's a weird one.
As she looked at them, which is something that Carol talked about too at one point.
Yeah.
The mother claimed that she experienced sleep paralysis anyway before they moved.
A horrible experience.
Yes, but it got really severe and much, much worse while they were in that house. And I just can't imagine having that as a recurring thing that happens to you while you sleep.
Yeah. That's really bizarre. I wondered if I used to get sleep paralysis when I was really wee.
Oh, yeah.
Because I used to play a game when I was going to sleep that a big monster came up at the bottom of my bed and I had to like be under the covers, otherwise he was going to get me. And I just kind of like play this if I was lying in bed at night by myself.
That doesn't sound like a game. That sounds like a nightmare.
Yeah, because he was just kind of like, oh, is that a leg sticking out? And I'd like
tuck your feet in.
Tuck my feet
well,
in.
everyone does the feet thing, I think.
Yeah, and that kind of thing. But like with the monster coming up at the end of the bed, that's described how sleep paralysis is sometimes described. So I wonder if I had that at one point.
And that's how you rationalised it.
And then saw it and was like, oh, sweet. And then just kind of turned it into a game.
Maybe. From what I've heard of sleep paralysis, there's generally more fear.
Yeah, I never had.
It's really frightening if it does happen.
Could just be a coincidence, but I have wondered that. Because, you told me something, I went and spoke to the painter at the door, and then came back and had already forgotten what you said. So memory is not my strong point. Yeah, there you go.
Well, she explained that they experienced all kinds of stuff when they were staying at number 19. They heard bangs, noises, a lot of things similar to what Carol had experienced years before. They had really strange and horrible smells in the house, which again sounds like something from a Conjuring movie.
Yes.
And her kettle would turn on and off, which, if it happens at the moment, might send you bankrupt.
It's evil.
Can't afford that kind of shit.
Wasting that kind of electricity.
Are you kidding me? But finally, there's the case of the Maxwell family, who lived at number 30 on Park Crescent. So 30. They went public with their story after claiming that they had been suffering for months under the oppression of whatever was haunting their home.
That's unusual.
So this is the same street. 3
Yeah.
different houses. 4 different occasions.
But I wonder if this is what you were saying about how if suddenly there'd be 6 more poltergeists in school.
Well, it's interesting you say that about this one in particular.
Yeah.
They heard all kinds of strange things. They said they heard a baby crying in the home, even though they didn't have a baby in the family. The mother of the family actually said she was thrown against a wall by whatever this energy was. She claimed she was pushed down the stairs. And they even went so far as to nail one of their bedroom cupboards shut.
Wow.
Because it kept opening and closing on its own. Now, the family was so scared by everything that was going on, they claimed that they all had to sleep in the same room because they didn't feel safe sleeping on their own. They had kids. I can't remember how many, but they had younger children, which would be horrible.
That would be horrible.
I wouldn't wish that on anyone who had children, regardless of whether it's true or not. That would be horrible. They spoke about seeing a shadow person lurking around the house that they saw several times. And they were so scared by the shadow person that they felt the need to hang crucifixes around the home to try and protect themselves. However, they were interviewed by the BBC for a radio programme. And the house was included in a book called The Ghost Hunter's Guide to Britain.
Yep.
So they did gain some notoriety with their story. And when the house was investigated by a paranormal investigations team, the leader of which spoke to Malcolm Robinson for his book, they saw and experienced nothing.
Doesn't surprise me.
Well, for a paranormal investigations team to go in and come out saying they don't believe the house is haunted.
Well, when there's shadow people and doors slamming and...
She was thrown down the stairs.
Yeah.
And the mother responded to their claim, basically saying, of course it's haunted. We were interviewed by the BBC.
Bit fame hunting, perhaps?
So, there's a vibe. I don't know. That was just what they said.
I can well imagine if this was, depending when this was, oh my god, our house is haunted. Find out all about it on our YouTube channel. You know?
Kind of. Hang on, I'll double check when this all happened. Because this was more recently.
It's like the YouTubers who talk about paranormal things, and every time they move house, they've moved into a haunted house.
Yeah.
Is my new house haunted? I'm like, well, it seems odd that every house you move into is a haunted one.
Okay, so the Maxwell case, who lived at number 30, that happened in 2000. So fairly recent, like 20 years ago. More recent than what happened to Carol.
Yep.
If that helps or
Yeah,
answers your question.
That's interesting.
So make of that what you will. It's kind of he said, she said, because they said they experienced all these things and then the investigators said what they... You can make of it what you will. That was just the conclusion.
Yes.
So that's all of the spooky happenings of Park Crescent.
Sounds like a spooky place.
But I want to try and get into what actually happened to Carol and why.
Yeah. What were these localised earthquakes causing everything to shake?
And I think this might be the bit that you'll like. Or hate.
I'm excited to find out either way.
Do you have any thoughts before we get into it? What do you think about the other hauntings on the same street?
I mean, the Maxwell one seems like boo hockey, I say. Just a bit nonsensical. A bit coincidental.
Well, see, when you said much earlier that you were more convinced because it wasn't things being smashed and people weren't being thrown into walls, I was like, well, we're going to get to that in a bit.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, I moved onto this street and I was even more haunted than everyone else has been on this street. I'm like, oh, were you? Were you really? Are you sure you didn't just trip and hit the wall?
Well, what was interesting was the family who lived at number 17, who had things happen in the 70s. I think Robinson spoke to the mother of the family and asked her, like, were you scared? Like, had you heard about the reputation? And she said she didn't know about what was happening 10 years before.
Yeah, that's more interesting.
And if she'd known that, she might not have moved.
Yeah.
That she had no idea.
Well, because I feel if you're moving in somewhere, you might give the street a Google, or because you'll probably put the address in at some point to like find it on Google Maps if you're going to go there for a viewing. And then if you put in the 19 Crescent Place, you'd suddenly think, hang on, why has this got so many like results?
Or like if you were from the area, you might speak to people locally and say you've got a viewing and be like, oh, did you hear what happened there?
Yeah.
My granny said, and
Pub chatter.
My dad, that kind of stuff. But the 70s case, the woman had no idea.
Yeah, so you could easily miss it back then. And in 2000 and even 2003 as well, I think, compared to now.
Yeah.
Just interesting.
So let's get into some theories.
Hit me.
Some possible reasons. I think I'll save one of the more probable or controversial ones for the end.
Hit me.
Because I'm curious to know what you think.
Is your first theory that there was a poltergeist?
No, my first theory, and the first one that's been posited for poltergeist activity generally,
Yep.
Which is a lot of what these are ley lines.
Oh, yes. Yep. I've heard of the ley lines.
Which I don't know much about, I'll be honest. They are apparently lines of energy that cross the earth and connect at different spiritual sites.
Yeah.
So the theory is that where these places cross, there's poltergeist activity. But that's all I have.
Presumably they cross at this crescent.
I don't know.
Sweet.
I don't know. Another possible reason is hallucinations. Whether they're hallucinations caused by taking drugs, which you suggest with the LSD in the tap water.
Yes, that was actually one of my thoughts before we get into this one. Like that experiment that happened in America where they gave a bunch of people LSD without their permission to see what would happen.
So unethical.
It's got a name. I forgot what it.
Fucking awful.
Yeah, but that like whole thing happened and they denied it happened, and it was only more recently they went, actually, yeah, we did do that.
MK Ultra?
Yes, I think it was part of that. Yeah, was it like that kind of thing?
Or a leak?
Ooh, yeah. Something was leaked into this house and everyone went, oh, fuck. It's a bit conspiratorial. But
There's also a theory that it could have been hallucinations caused by a mental health condition. So things, there's no medical history to back this up in this case, but generally, like some people think if it's poltergeist activity, someone might be suffering with something like schizophrenia, where you might have a visual hallucination. But there's no proof in this case that anyone had schizophrenia.
yeah, that'd be a lot of people having it all at the same time.
Oh yeah, because they were all saying the same thing.
Yeah.
And there were doctors reporting the same thing.
Strange. Speaking of conspiratorial things, we were in a bookshop yesterday and I walked past a shelf that was conspiracy theories and alternative history.
Alternative history?
Alternative history. That's what the section was. Like, you can have an alternative history.
Are we alternative history?
Maybe. I just thought it was a bit
Maybe
weird.
it's like emo goth history.
Oh yeah, like that kind of like alt look.
Yeah, alt history.
Yeah. But
That's bizarre.
I didn't look at what books were on that shelf. I just went, what?
But then you've states in the US that are banning critical race theory and saying that you can't teach about like black leaders of history because it's confusing for children. And rules in place that you can't teach about critical race theory or racism generally because you might make white children feel bad. I feel that comes under alternative history, where you're like, oh no, it was fine and this didn't happen. You know?
Yeah.
It's a dangerous thing.
Fortunately, it was a very small shelf and seemed to be mostly UFO books.
Uh-huh.
But it was just a strange thing to come across.
I feel a bit deflated, but I stand by my point that that's where alternative history gets you.
Yes, absolutely. Anyway, these people are being poisoned.
Maybe. I don't think so,
No,
but maybe.
I don't think so.
Then there's environmental and atmospheric reasons. So you have things like air pressure, lightning, magnetic fields, and even infrasound.
Tell me about infrasound.
Infrasound is sound that's too low for human ears to pick up. But infrasound, if it's loud enough, can make things vibrate. And it can make you feel really uneasy because you can't hear it, but it has a physical impact on your body.
That's weird.
Now, I don't mind this theory for poltergeist or ghost hauntings generally, because it's a reason that's given that would suggest why people feel uneasy in certain places.
Yeah.
When even if they don't know the history of the place, they have no background, they haven't been told anything, they visit a location and they feel unsettled.
Yep.
Because there's certain places that are particularly prone to infrasound.
Yeah. I like that. Do you know what can cause infrasound?
It's a bunch of things. So things like environmental factors can do it. Earthquakes, like minor earthquakes, earth tremors can cause it. You have to have a certain level of earthquake to cause infrasound that's loud enough that it has an impact. But things like that.
That's really interesting. I've never considered that because there's a whole spectrum of light we can't see. So there will be a whole spectrum of sound we can't hear.
Well, it's a certain range of decibels that you can pick up.
Yeah.
Because dogs can hear more.
Yeah, it'll be frequencies.
So it's the lower end of that. There were some interesting experiments done. I think this experiment they experimented with infrasound in the vaults in Edinburgh.
Oh, yeah?
Mm-hmm. They either brought infrasound with them or they did tests and found that there was lots of loud infrasound in the vaults.
Yeah, because presumably you could get a device that could pick that up.
Yes, which I think is what they did. They either brought a device that caused it or they did tests and saw that there's a lot there anyway.
That's super interesting.
Which would explain why people feel so uneasy when they go down there.
Yeah.
So I like it as a theory.
I like it. I think that's interesting.
Now, naturally, there are arguments for this whole thing being a drama that Carol created for attention.
Yep. Has to be a theory.
Yeah, for the drama, for the thoughts and prayers. A shame if it's true, but I don't have any way to rule it out.
Nope. That would be a shame, wouldn't it?
Yeah, there's testimony from other people who saw things happening that it was very clear she wasn't doing.
Yeah.
But some of these people went on to speak to news outlets. The audio recordings were shared as part of a BBC Radio Scotland programme.
Oh, yeah.
So there's a benefit there because it reached national media.
Fame.
So you can't say what's true and what isn't, even from people who have reputable jobs.
Yep.
So it's a theory.
It's a theory.
I don't know if I believe it, but you have to entertain it.
Yep. I don't like it, but it could be.
Naturally, there's also the theory that you would expect that the poltergeist was the spirit of someone who had died. That was haunting Carol or haunting the family or the home. Which is probably more along the lines of what you expected when we started this episode.
Yeah, that's the kind of theories I was ready for.
And there's no suggestion or no theories about who the poltergeist might have been if a poltergeist is a spirit.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of arguments online as to whether poltergeists are spirits. Or whether they're energy. We're going to get into it a little bit. And when we talked about the Mackenzie poltergeist back in season 2,
oh, yep.
The poltergeist was a person, like the spirit of someone who was buried in Greyfriars Kirkyard.
Yeah.
Based on someone who had died, which was different to this case.
Yeah. It's almost just like ghost lore, isn't it?
One theory I've seen over and over again, which is the one that I think you might find interesting, is the theory that poltergeist activity has nothing to do with the souls of the dead. Poltergeist activity is caused by humans. It's just something we don't fully understand. And it's something that's particularly prevalent with like teenage or people going through a turbulent time.
Times of heightened emotions.
Yes, and this phenomena is called recurrent spontaneous psychokinesis.
That's pretty nifty.
Yeah, I'd never come across this before. I hadn't stumbled upon the argument that poltergeists are different from ghosts.
Yeah.
I always put them together. But this theory suggests that if you're going through a rough time emotionally, you're heightened, whether because of anger or upset or whatever, this might cause some kind of split in your body's energy.
Yes.
And I mean like physical energy, like the scientific energy, because everything is made of energy.
The kinetic energy, potential energy, that kind of energies.
Do you know what I mean? Not like an aura.
Yeah.
So if you're going through this rough time, it causes some kind of split in this energy, which means some of it can act and have an impact on your surroundings independently of you.
That's pretty out there.
Yes.
But I would like it to be true. That'd be kind of cool.
Well, I think when you look at Carol's case, it kind of makes sense. That, like, you're upset and it's just, this is one of the ways that your body is reacting to that.
It's just kind of an overspilling of something you can't contain.
Yes. But it's happening in a way that we don't understand.
Yeah. It's a bit too out there for me, but totally it's a cool theory.
I'd never come across it before. No. And it's interesting looking at it as something that is done by humans. It's not paranormal. It's just something we don't understand.
Yeah. It almost grounds it in a way.
Yeah. Because there were several people who thought, with Carol in particular, that the activity was coming from her. It was things that she was doing without meaning to. Mm-hmm. And the turmoil she'd been through was causing all of these disturbances.
Yeah.
Because she was upset. So once she was more settled in Sauchie, surrounded by people more familiar to her, she calmed down. So the activity abated.
Yeah.
Because she wasn't upset anymore.
I like it.
It's
cool.
interesting. That's why I wanted to bring it up. Because I didn't think you would be totally on board. But I thought it would intrigue you.
You can colour me intrigued. And I'm happy you brought it to the table. What else we got?
Well, those are all our theories. Mm-hmm. But in my research, I came across a couple of scientific papers.
Oh, yeah.
That actually look into poltergeist activity.
Wow.
And reasons for it that might come from the brain and why haunted houses have, or like what it is environmentally about a haunted house that makes us uneasy. So looking into things like the infrasound and stuff like that, but in a scientific way, like measuring the environment and the impact it has on the human body.
I like that. That's interesting.
So there was two I found, which you can have a look at your leisure. The first one was Delusions of the Paranormal, a haunting question of perception. And it's in the Journal of Nervous and Mental Disease.
It's a fine title.
And the second one was Things That Go Bump in the Literature, an environmental appraisal of haunted houses.
Oh.
And I thought that was so interesting. Like scientific studies. And I know that, like, yeah, you have to check your sources and everything, but just the idea of scientists looking into things like this is so cool.
Well, when there's such a lack of scientific method through most ghost huntings, I like that there is due diligence with the scientific method coming into it.
I like, particularly with the second one, I like that they're going back to basics where they're looking at the environmental causes for physical reactions.
Yeah.
I think that's really interesting, and I think it could have some really interesting results.
I think so.
I'll try and make sure they're linked somewhere, because it is interesting. But the first of these papers, the Delusions of the Paranormal one, I think it's Lang and Horan, who are the lead names. They suggested that poltergeist experiences are delusions, quote, resulting from the affective and cognitive dynamics of percipients' interpretation of ambiguous stimuli.
That's easy for you to say.
I think what they're saying is poltergeists are your way of responding to things you can't explain. Even if it's not paranormal, you see something fall, you didn't think it could have fallen, so someone pushed it.
Yeah.
It's your brain responding to ambiguous stimuli.
Oh, yep.
It's your interpretation of what you see.
I like that.
Which isn't to say, like, that's what happened with Carol, but that's what they're saying about poltergeist generally. I remember a story my brother told me about being on one of the big gas tanker ships at sea, and there's one guy had to get his bedroom moved because it had accidentally been constructed in such a way that all the engine noise had constructive interference where his pillow was. So you'd stand in the room and it wouldn't be too loud, but if you put your head on the pillow, it was deafeningly loud. In that one spot.
In that one specific spot, because that's where all the different sound waves...
It wasn't even the bed, it was the construction of the boat. It all just converged on that point.
Yeah, I think there would have been other points like that through the ship, but there was one happened where his pillow was on his bed, that if you put your... And everybody else came to, like, see what he was talking about. And you did, if you put your head there. My brother was saying it was ridiculously loud. See,
because that sounds like it should not be physically possible. So if that happened and you didn't know that...
Yeah.
I would be freaked by that.
Yeah, you would be. You'd be really freaked out.
So, things like that it's ambiguous stimuli. You can't explain it. You personally don't understand it. So your brain comes up with a way to explain it.
Yeah, like, what the hell is this? And especially if it was, like, periodically a noise, because that noise was constant of a boat and engines and such. But if it was only something that, like, I don't know, your boiler kicked in at night and then it rumbled in your pillow and you just kind of freak out and then it would go away, you'd be totally freaked out. But it's got a clear scientific explanation. Yeah. It's weird,
but
isn't it?
You just don't understand it.
Yeah.
I think it's an interesting conversation, and I'm keen to see where studies like this will go in the future.
Yeah.
Especially in terms of things like the split of energy. That intrigues me. I don't necessarily believe it, but I would be interested to see tests done.
Fair.
But that is the story of the Sauchie Poltergeist.
Oh, whew. Just coming up on 2 hours
It's a
of
biggie.
spooky goodness to kick off season 4.
What do you think? What are your final thoughts?
My final thoughts.
Don't tell me them all, because we're going to debrief for the wee blether.
Yeah, some of my final thoughts before we nip over to Patreon. It's an interesting story. And my main kind of takeaway, I guess, is that I hope Carol's okay. And that she's found peace into her adulthood with what has happened and her hounding by the media.
By all accounts, she is living happily. She got married, and she's fine.
Good.
Like, she just wanted to move on with her life.
Yeah.
She didn't want to talk to anyone about it. She just kind of, in Robinson's book, he kind of put it down to her treating it as a phase in her life. And it's over now, and she just wants to move on.
I think that's fair.
But yeah, she got married and had a family, I think. So she seems fine.
She seems fine. Well, that's good.
If that quells any of your concern.
Yeah, as for what happened, I'm kind of where the Sheila Logan was in that, oh, that's a bit weird, and I can't explain it. But it won't keep me up at night wondering what happened.
Did I manage to get the sweet spot that I talked about at the beginning of the episode?
Yeah, I
where
think so.
It's just enough of both sides of the coin for you to be intrigued.
Yes, definitely. I think having enough people who allegedly were there was enough to make me go, there's one person who was by themselves, had all these spooky things happen, and they just said that they happened. I just stuck my head into this hat to read the Book of Mormon. Nobody else can see, you know. But I enjoyed it immensely. What do you think? What are your thoughts on it, on the whole?
Honestly, I don't know. I don't know how I feel. Because oddly, I'm leaning more to there being some kind of human or scientific explanation. Because I do believe it came from her, but I don't think she did it on purpose.
Okay.
I find that more believable.
You think there's some sort of new branch of science?
Maybe, or just like something we don't understand about how emotion affects our body. But I'm not claiming to know what that is.
Yeah.
I think it's an intriguing idea. And in this case, I could see it being true because she was upset and she felt like things were out of control and things started happening around her.
Some sort of leaking of the conscience.
Yeah.
I think that's fair.
I hope you enjoyed the episode.
Yes.
If you're still here.
Thank you very much for being here. And please consider checking out the Patreon.
Yes.
We're going to go and debrief the episode for another extra half-hour chat.
We are, yeah. So if you want to join us, you can find us at patreon.com/generallyspooky.
Yep.
But there are links everywhere.
Everywhere. And you can just Google it. The Spark Company, awesome clothing that you should check out with the link in the description. What are we? Spooky Spark 5 for
Yes.
discount code. If you're coming to Scotland or you want to preserve Scotland, consider a National Trust for Scotland membership. And I just consider it anyway, but you can also support us if you use the link in the description. We'll get a small commission. And
Bird and Blend have a Halloween countdown tea calendar on sale right now.
Right now, here.
Their link is somewhere
Their
down
links
below.
are about. And yeah.
But most of all, we appreciate you listening.
Yes. Thank you for being here.
That's what makes our hearts warm.
Yep, and that's all we need from you. Thank you for being here, and welcome to Season 4.
Season 4, baby!
Yeah!
We'll be back next week.
We will indeed. Bye.
Bye.